YouTube live stream. Everything's good here. Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2. Let's find out how that goes. Hopefully it goes through. If it doesn't, we'll just roll with it. We'll just roll with it because that's what we do. But I'm glad you guys are here. Glad to have you guys joining in. I'll turn on one more light here. See if that's helpful. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Testing 1, 2. How does that sound on the YouTube live stream for my live streamers on YouTube? Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. I will not sing you a song because that is not in my skill set. How's that? I can hear you now. Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and cue in our opening intro for our podcast. Welcome, friends. This is Binyam on the Checkin In podcast. Just a few minutes behind today due to some technical challenges, but we can navigate those well. My name is Binyam. I'm your host on the Checkin In podcast. This is the podcast where we do three things, three really important things that I'll mention in a moment. But before I do, today is Tuesday, the 24th of August, 2021. This is episode number 38 on the Checkin In podcast. Lovely to have you guys joining in. Thank you for being a part, spending a few moments with me. I spent about a half hour here doing some deep dives into my own self for the following three reasons that I was mentioning before. Number one, I want to grow an awareness of myself. I want to grow an awareness of myself because the more I know myself, the more I'm able to navigate my world really well. The more I'm able to understand what really means a lot to me, what I value, those kind of things. Secondly, I do this because I want to learn to be kind to myself. Why? I have for a lifetime lived without being kind to myself, without showing myself grace. And so what does it look like for me to learn my way forward in a way that I'm also being patient with me, acknowledging my humanity and saying, hey, I'm not worthless. I'm actually worthwhile showing love to. And so that's an important element. And then thirdly, it's to maximize my happiness. Now, I love happy moments. I love experiencing happiness along the way. Super important for me. But to get to the happiness that I experience, which is something rich, I experience a rich flavor of happiness. I have had to learn how to navigate some of those other emotions and feelings along the way that are also really important. So that's a really important component. It's how to process everything else that gets to the happiness, all the other uncomfortable emotions. Friends, this is the Checkin In podcast. I love what we do here. I'm so committed to it. Our numbers may be small right now by way of attendance on the live stream, but I can see this blowing up. And I hope it blows up in a really good way that impacts and helps so many others to do likewise, to be able to do these three things in their lives. So join me as I look at today's question on the Checkin In podcast, episode 38. Glad to have you. Today's question is the following. If you had the chance, what would you tell your future self? If you had the chance, what would you tell your future self? I'm live streaming on YouTube. We're just giving some challenges earlier. I'm not live streaming, but I'm recording on Spotify, and that gave me some challenges at the beginning as well. And of course, over on TikTok, hello, my TikTokers, and Instagram as well. So glad to have you guys all joining in. Today's question again, if you had the chance, what would you tell your future self? And no, I'm not vegan. I love my food, all flavors and varieties, but I'm not vegan, no. So before I answer with my own responses to the question, one thing I usually like to do is I like to consider the question and why the question is important in the first place. Why do I want to focus on the question? And what's helpful about focusing in on the question for me? First thought as I look at the question, if you had the chance, what would you tell your future self? It seems that we can't answer this question until we've had some experiences in life. Experiences for me are what help me understand how I'm responding to something. So experiences that come along for all of us, I think, we're able to respond saying yay or nay, or not a big fan of, which kind of for me is in the category of nay. So as we go through various experiences in life, as we sort of embrace and go through these seasons in life, experiencing these things, I reflect that there is a response on our end. There's a response that necessarily isn't right or wrong. It just has more to say about what we value or don't value, what we appreciate or don't appreciate, what we want to invest ourselves in saying yes to that, like a hell yes, or no, thank you. I'm not interested in that. So, we're speaking out of our experiences when we're answering this question. If you had a chance, what would you tell your future self? And the reason I'm saying we're speaking out of our experiences is because we're trying to give ourselves some intel about how we work. And this is where one of the components of our premise of existing on this podcast comes in, to be more self aware. How can we be more aware of ourselves so that we can say, this is what really means a lot to me, or here's what I don't care for in my own experience? That's a really important thing. What do those experiences tell us about ourselves that we can grow an awareness of ourselves to be able to say, future self, I'm going to tell you the following because it has meant something to me. And then, secondly, these are experiences I think that come along where they are meaningful to us, meaningful experiences where we're like, this is so impacting that I need to tell my future self about it because I learned something about me going through these experiences. Does that make sense? It is something so important. Like, for example, I wouldn't, what's something I am not too like concerned about? I guess one of the things I'm not too concerned about is, let's say, how I sweep the floor. That's a really abstract one there, but I'm choosing that one for a reason. In Africa, as I grew up in Africa, we would sweep the floor, but we would not use a dustpan because we could not afford a dustpan in Africa. And so I learned how to sweep the floor. Hey, my friend Lewis, good to see you. As I swept the floor there, we would learn how to pick up the dirt and put it into our cupped palm to throw away with our fingers. And so I mastered the art of picking up dirt and stuff from the floor so that it was eventually picked up like everything. Coming to Canada, when we could finally afford having a dustpan, it was just so awkward to learn how to use a dustpan. And I hadn't grown up using a dustpan. I mention all this because this is something that for me is not very important. It's basically trivial for me. You know what I'm saying? It's trivial. Thanks, Danny. I've heard my voice is quite soothing. I appreciate that. And I want to serve you guys. I'll let you know at the end how, if you can remind me at the end. But as I, for me now, as I sweep the floor, it doesn't matter. I'll usually do it with my fingers, but if there's a dustpan, I'll use a dustpan. You know, I'll make do with that. That for me is not something as important that I'm going to say, I need to tell my future self about this experience. So when I think about the question, if you had the chance, what would you tell your future self? Not only are you growing aware, but you're growing aware of what things are super important for you in life that you need to tell your future self, saying, this is important. I want you to pay attention to this. I want you to be aware of this element here. So I really value that component where we're thinking very intentionally, what is that thing in the future that means a lot to us, that compels us to say, oh, I can't drop the ball on this one here. Does that make sense, friends? It's really important to be aware of those elements. And so that is what something that means a lot to me as I navigate into my future here, thinking of this question. If I had the chance, what would I tell my future self? Well, number one, I'm growing in awareness through experiences that I have to say, I like it or I am not a big fan of it. And then number two, I'm going to be looking out for those really important ones to answer this question. What are those significant landmark events that came across for me where I'm like, I need to attend to this in such a way that my future self is going to benefit? What are those important things? I'm going to share with you some of mine, and you'll see the important factor there. For me, it's like one of those, oh, I need my future self to know what I'm experiencing right now so it can make some appropriate calls and decisions with reference to me, the self-awareness piece. And then finally, and thirdly, if I had a chance, what would I tell my future self? As I think about this question, I think about that element of preparation. That element of preparation. Sometimes we go through life, and you know what it's like when you're in school, for example, and you show up in class only to be surprised by a test that you forgot to study for. This is my experience so often. And you're like, you have that sinking sensation in your gut. You're like, oh man, I forgot. And now I'm hooped. Preparation is a really helpful thing in life. Preparation and knowing how to forecast what's coming up. For example, when I look at the forecast outside, and by the way, today I'm recording for the first time in my new apartment. This is my new apartment. I place my work desk here in such a way where you could see, hopefully, the beautiful skyline behind me, but it's a little bright right now. At nighttime, if I'm doing some podcasting, maybe I'll try and feature that because it's so beautiful. We got the Calgary Tower, we got the Telus building. There's some beautiful lights on the skyscrapers behind me, and so I would love to share that with you. But in the meantime, the point I'm trying to focus on is all right, forecasting for the future. Today, the forecast is looking really nice, but here in Calgary, we know how fast the weather changes. It changes so fast. And so we've learned, for those of us who live here in Calgary, to dress for the weather and to prepare for the unexpected. So it looks nice right now. It's a little chilly outside actually at the moment, but in preparing for the nice weather, we're going to carry our rain gear or have it handy and close by, or a sweater when it gets cool like it currently is. And so that's a really helpful thing to be prepared for the unknown in the future. Because in the absence of preparing for the unknown, it doesn't go so well for us, does it? It doesn't go very well at all. And so this question helps us prepare for the future. If you had the chance, what would you tell your future self? How can you forecast into the future based on what you're learning right now? If I see rain clouds coming on the horizon, I'm not going to go out dressed for summer. I'm going to say, I have an expectation that those rain clouds are going to come this way and I may be affected by that weather pattern over there. So I'm going to prepare myself for that forecast coming up. So that's an important element for me. Those are some things I'm thinking about as I consider today's question. If you could have the chance, what would you tell your future self? And so that's an important component. Let me dive now into my responses. Now, remember, there's three things that I'm aiming for in this podcast, and I want to practice those for myself. So let me see if I can do that intentionally. Number one, I want to grow an awareness of myself. That's what I'm going to do as I answer this question. I'm going to become more aware of saying, how does Biniam take and how does Biniam work? Number two, how can I exercise kindness to myself in the midst of acknowledging where I'm presently at and what kind of things I'm working through? How can I be gracious with myself? Number three, how can I maximize my happiness in the midst of processing some of the emotions that may come up in preparation for the future? These are some things that I am keeping in mind as I answer the question. If you had the chance, what would you tell your future selves? And by all means, I would love to hear some of you guys' assessments too. Here's where I'm coming from as I answer this question. If I had the chance to tell my future self something, here's what I would tell myself. I would tell myself that who I am when no one's watching is still important. Who I am when no one is watching is still important. And this is kind of like my bird's eye view, my bird's eye umbrella of what I'm trying to get at in answering this question for myself. So, who I am when no one's watching is really important. Why? Because I grew up for many years living in dishonesty. Living dishonesty by way of giving a presentation of myself to those who really mattered in my life, a presentation that wasn't accurate to who I really was. And when I finally came out and told the truth of who I was, now I saw the world, it was really painful for them because they felt that they did not know me anymore. They felt that I hadn't been honest with them, and I hadn't really. I had always operated from fear of rejection, thinking if anyone knew the real Biniam, then I'm done for. They wouldn't want anything to know about me. And when I finally said, screw that, I'm going to actually try and be transparent and honest with myself first. And I'm going to present that honest self to my world around me. It was then that I walked into this new place that I currently exist. And so I tell myself in the future, as I continue pursuing my business endeavors, as I continue looking for those advantages and opportunities that come along that are opening up to me, it's still important to value the things that I currently value that make me real in my own self, like in the way I see myself in the mirror, that I'm being honest and true, and that I'm being transparent with me first and then with my world around me. And I say that because one of the temptations I think that I keep in the forefront is that fear that I once operated on, that if people knew the real me, that they wouldn't like it. And so that then I would find myself listening to the temptation that says, let me try and pretend to be something that I'm not. And in pretending to be something that I'm not, then I would go back to my old way of life. So who I am when no one's watching is really important. It's something that I want my future self to know because I want to continue on that consistency of being transparent and honest. Taylor Kind, my Amharic is very small. My Amharic awareness. Why is your voice so calming? I think I've worked very hard over the years to ensure that when I'm engaging and connecting with people, it's in a way where they feel safe. I don't know and don't regret anything because we learn from it. That's true. We learn from our past experiences. You're right, Ollie. However, hello, my dear K-Man. I appreciate that. For me personally, I would say something that's really important is as I go forward in life, as I go forward in my experiences, how can I better myself because of what I've come through? I want to learn my lessons, yes, but how can my lessons now inform who I'm becoming in the future? And that is really, really important for me. And so my commitment as I go forward is how can I lock in and say, these are my non-negotiables that I'm never going to go back to where I formerly was by way of dishonesty, by way of giving people something because I fear rejection. For me now, I have embraced the possibility that I'm not everyone's jam. You know, that some people may be like, I'm not sure if I'm crazy about what you're offering. And I want to say, hey, no worries. Go find what that is for you. And I'm okay that it's not me. I want to encourage them to be able to find their hell yes wherever that is. Because that's what I'm finding is my hell yes. I'm finding my hell yes in the way I'm going forward and saying, here's what I'm presenting, here's what I'm offering that is true and authentic to me. And how can I commit to that? 13 degrees. How is that possible? We're in August. I know it is not the warmest weather at the moment right now, my friend came in. The sun is shining today, though. It's beautiful, but I'm wearing long sleeves for a reason. It is, yeah, it's not the kindest of weather at the moment. So that's one thing I would tell my future self is I live sardonic in Calgary, Alberta, which is in Western Canada. Um, it is worthwhile to still be true to me. That's what I'd want to tell myself. And I want to say that because I'm forecasting something. Oh, it's hot in the UK, says Ollie. Oh man. Oh, I'm happy for you, Ollie. I wish we had some of it here too. I'm forecasting in my future where I want to go. Right now, look at this, guys. I only have a handful. Like I can count on one hand 35 degrees in, whoa, that's crazy, bro, over in Ontario. We don't have that right now. But our summer here in Calgary is super short. And so we've kind of anticipated that. Guys, the forecast in my future that helps me answer this question and why I told you my answer the way I did is because in my future, I'm forecasting amazing growth. I'm forecasting amazing numbers who are going to come and listen into this podcast and be a part of it in an active way and who are going to sign up on my membership. I am so enthusiastically optimistic about what is coming up in my future. I've seen a way that my content affects people. I've seen the way that's been received. I've seen how people really buy into it, and so that really encourages me. And while that encourages me, I am still aware of the areas that I can flop on, the areas in which I'm willing to yield and say, maybe I'll go back to my old way. And especially as thanks, my friend, I'm sardonic, I appreciate that. As I keep on going forward, I want to grow in confidence and courageousness of how I want to present and operate in my life. In essence, one of the things that really means a lot to me right now is when I meet my followers along the way in my city, for example, and they express shock saying, I got to meet you and I did not realize you were here in our city and all that kind of stuff. The real amazing thing that encourages me is that they keep on saying to me, you're really the way you present online. And so that means a lot to me because it shows that there's consistency there. It means a lot to me that my family members also say, Binyam, we have known you really well and we can tell you're really being authentic to who you truly are. That means a lot for me. I don't want to let that go. I want to lock that in with such intentionality that I'm not going to yield on that as I go forward in my future. And so as I forecast amazing success, like massive success with thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands showing up for the live streams, showing up for my content. And as I forecast that kind of success in my future, I'm not doubting that it's coming. I'm just being patient as I build my way to such a place. I'm also saying, what does it take for me to continue walking with integrity, even when the stakes increase? When I have a lot more attention and a lot more people saying, you're all that. How can I continue to still be consistent, especially when no one's watching me, or if the whole world's watching me, with the things that I value, the things that I'm professing are really important, the way I'm making people feel, the way I'm setting my boundaries and communicating them, all that is really important. So I want to grow an awareness of myself in such a way that as my platform and as my influence grows, that still being true to here. I don't want to lose who Biniam is right now. I love the Biniam that I am right now. That's the how can I be kind to myself piece. I have grown so much. I've learned so much from my past. And I've seen how integrally important it is that I am true to myself, that I don't change who I am and the way that I operate with people when I meet them. Like when I see us coming up and saying hello or trying to get some attention, I want to be honest with you, saying, "Hey, I so value your support and your love, and if I don't have time, I'll be able to say something like." I'd love to connect even more meaningfully, but I just don't have the space right now, or whatever. Even as I continue to put forth my content and try to encourage and serve you, my community, that for me is really, really important. I want to buy inside in such a way. And so, what I tell my future self is, Biniam, continue to lock in to being your true, authentic self, expressing that, communicating what you need people to know about you and how much you can give of yourself away and how much you can't. Keeping aware of the commitments you're making. So I know that I've got a priority list in my life of who gets more of me. So, for example, my kids are just in the next room doing some quiet reading, but I love my kids and I want to make sure that they have a present dad. So one of my primary commitments, even before you guys, even though I really appreciate you guys, is to make sure that my kids have a dad who is present and attentive in their lives, who is able to grow alongside them. I want my kids to be able to look back on this season of my time with them, knowing that I was present, that I was attentive, that I was engaged, that I was supportive. All these things are really important, but that can only happen if first and foremost, I'm looking after me. I'm looking after me in such a way that says, Binyam, are you still able to communicate who you are and what you value in an authentic way that represents honesty internally so that people know that they're getting the real Binyam? Or are you signing on to be something you're not in such a way that others are saying, this does not look compelling. This is like, for example, if my followers were meeting me in public and saying, wow, you're really not who you say you are, that would be devastating for me to hear, because that would mean that there's something out of whack or out of alignment in what I'm trying to do in my progression and self-growth as an individual person. I so value consistency in my life, friends. I so value being the same person over and over and over again. I think that's one of the things I that has informed why I'm really, I guess, successful in some way on hello, my dear friends who are coming in. This is why I'm really confident in what I'm presenting to you guys on my social platforms, because there's a consistency. As you watch my content over time, you might see me shifting and changing, but you'll see a consistency in the way I treat people, in the way I communicate, engage with ideas. All this is really important to me. And that's why I wanted to present and offer that to you guys. My three best books that I've ever read, I've actually got a few of them right here. Um, This book is called Rising Strong by Brene Brown. I'm actually doing an audiobook reading of this book on my podcast. I'll tell you about that at the end here. This is a fantastic book that I will sign up from the library. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. Really amazing read. And then there's another one by one of my favorite authors, and that is Love Your Energy. I appreciate that, Tyson. Thanks for being here. What the other one I'm thinking is of another one of my favorite authors, and her name is Esther Perel, and this is the book, The State of Affairs, and fantastic book that helped me learn so much about myself. And I can't wait to share that with you guys. I would love for you guys to be able to experience what I learned in that book. It was really like mind blowing. And so I'm going to share with you guys some of my favorite thoughts and ideas from these books while I read these books. and use my voice, which some of you have been mentioning. You really appreciate how the calming nature of my voice. I want to serve you guys, and so the best way I want to serve you is by lending my voice so you can hear it and enjoy it and be comforted by it while I'm reading really impacting material, some really impacting books. And so the podcast that I'm featuring that on is called the Ben Asmer narrations. The Ben ASMR, the Ben Asmer narrations, all in one word. And so check that out. You have a nice view from your apartment. I'm glad you can see it. I wasn't sure if you could see it behind me. Isn't that amazing? I thought it was too bright for you guys to see because it's like on my screen, it's like just white out. But if you can see behind me, it's beautiful. And that's why I put my office right here. Because especially at nighttime, let me tell you, the view from here of the city skyline is so good. And I'd love to share that with you. Salam, good to see you, my dear. So let me just get back to my train of thought here. When I get famous, now I know I've already received a certain degree of famous. When I gain influence, is another way of saying it. I'm really intentional about gaining influence now because I want to share my life with you guys. I want to share my hope with you guys. I want to share my optimism with you guys. I want to share transformation with you guys. I'm really sold in on being a part of your lives and growing closer, even in our connection and our camaraderie together. I'm looking forward to coming along and inspiring you guys in some meaningful ways. But as that's my forecast of how I want to go forward, I still want to keep in my mind in a very present and active way. How can I be consistent with the honest Biniam? And how can I communicate that honest Biniam to you guys so that you are able to grow and trust in this collaboration as we exchange and reveal about ourselves and develop what is an amazing foundation for a long-term connection. That is my big investment. And that's why I'm really passionate about what I'm doing here, why I'm giving my time on a daily basis to these podcasts. This for me is really important. So the three elements for me that I'm practicing as I reference the question, if I had the chance to tell my future self, what would I tell my future self? I'm thinking about how I want to grow in awareness. What is really important for me? And I come from a past where I totally fumbled on this one. I fumbled in some significant ways where I spoke dishonestly and gave people a representation of me that was not true to me. That is important for me. And so that's the awareness piece that I'm saying. No more, excuse me, no more. I want to now offer you the real Biniam. And as I do that, how can I grow kind to myself, saying, hey, I may not be where I want to be yet, but I'm still striving for it. And it's still worthwhile for me to strive towards that. How can I show myself grace and patience and saying, Biniam, it's going to take some time before you get there, but keep on being consistent in the meantime. Keep on acknowledging when you fumble. Keep on becoming a person of integrity that you once longed to be. It's still possible. And number three, how can I maximize my happiness? Especially when it's discouraging seasons. Like I said right now, sometimes I'll have some of the haters coming on here and saying, oh my goodness, you are like there's no one listening to you. There's no one who's following your work and that kind of thing, right? Those kind of input I can easily, silence in my mind because that doesn't affect me as much. But my own one is like, okay, how can I continue to remind myself that as I work with patience going forward to extend my influence, it's going to take some time. And how can I still pursue my happiness while I'm being patient and through the challenging seasons of discouragement where I'm like, oh man, it's taking longer than I'm hoping. But nonetheless, here's how I'm applying myself. Ginger George, great to have you on here. How are you? So those are some of my reflections as I consider this question. If I had the chance to that, what would I tell my future self? Friends, I would love to hear what some of your ideas are on what you would tell your future self, the things that you value the most, the things that you're saying, this is so impacting that I want the future me to know this and continue to have this. There are some ways that I'd love to invite you to be a part of what I'm doing. I am currently right now investing myself intentionally in an online community. This is on my website, biniamasters.com. What I'm doing there is I'm creating a community in my membership tier whereby we are growing in these elements, and I have a chance to come alongside you where I know you by name, where I'm able to say, hey, I want to partner with you. Now, I can only give myself away in meaningful ways for so many people. haven't really announced this at all, so you guys are the first to hear about this. But listen really carefully. I'm going to say this really quickly. I'm going to have a closing cap of 1,000 members on my membership tier that I wanted to commit myself to on the opening tier. Of course, you can go up and have more of my time with the higher tiers. But 1,000 where I want to get to know you by name. I want to encourage and inspire you on a daily basis. Secondly, for the first 250 people who sign up, I'm locking you in for a lifetime cap on where you're presently signing on at the membership tier right now. The price is going to go up in time here as we continue to roll, because this is maximum value I want to give you guys. But for the first 250 of you that are going to sign up, I'm going to lock in a lifetime founders price for where you're currently signing up, and you'll be able to have that for the lifetime of you keeping this membership. If you take yourself off again and come back in, you may have to come back in at the new price. But for the first 250, we're going to lock in that price for you guys. And I'd love for you guys to join in, because I would love to see you guys grow alongside me. I'd love to inspire you with my experiences along the way. I'd like to be able to speak specifically to your context, and I want to get to know you name by name. So consider joining my membership tier on biniamasters.com. I would love to partner with you that way. In the meantime, continue to benefit. If this is all that you need and this podcast is serving you, I'm more than happy to continue to serve you guys. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Checkin In podcast. Hope to see you tomorrow. Bye for now.